Don't let YouTube decide what information you get. That's your choice. YouTube is deleting our videos and cuts you off from a source of honest reporting. Make sure you don't lose access to NTD's news content, and take a quick moment to subscribe to our newsletter so no matter what happens here, you'll keep your access to a trustworthy news source.
75 House lawmakers from both parties are calling on President Biden to reopen the U.S. border with Canada to non-essential travel. They say they're concerned that if nothing is done, the U.S. could lose billions of dollars by the end of the year.
Congressmen Bill Higgins, Bill Huizenga, and Kathy Castor are leading dozens of lawmakers in urging President Biden to take steps to reopen international travel to the U.S. In a letter Wednesday, a bipartisan group of 75 lawmakers laid out their call to action, including opening the border between the U.S. and Canada. The border was closed to non-essential travel in March last year in response to the CCP virus pandemic. Travel restrictions have so far been extended to July 21st this year. Separately, a coalition of 24 industry organizations on Wednesday urged the White House to lift restrictions that stop international travel to the United States. The groups are led by the U.S. Travel Association and represent airlines, casinos, hotels, airports, and airplane manufacturers. Meanwhile, the group of lawmakers is calling for Biden to increase the country's capacity to process visas for tourism and business. They say the U.S. lost $150 billion in export income due to the steep decline in travel last year, stating if nothing is done to lift entry restrictions, the U.S. is projected to lose 1.1 million jobs and an additional $175 billion by the end of the year. We reached out to the Biden administration for comment, but didn't hear back before airtime.
Pennsylvania lawmakers are initiating a forensic investigation of the 2020 and 2021 elections. State Senator Doug Mastriano has issued letters to several counties requesting information and materials that he says would enable an investigation. Speaking with the Epoch Times, Mastriano said the investigation is distinct from an audit or forensic audit. It's a big deep dive like we saw in Arizona. The probe will take a look at software machines, scanners, and ballots. Mastriano toured the audit facility in Arizona last month and said it is critically necessary to do the same in Pennsylvania. Mastriano sent letters to Philadelphia, York, and Tioga counties requesting they send over hard copies of ballots and other election materials. The senator expects a court battle will play out and says he's ready to request subpoena power if the counties do not comply or indicate willingness to comply by July 31st. Mastriano hasn't yet chosen firms to carry out the new probe, but said he prefers the companies conducting the audit in Arizona. And the widow of technology entrepreneur John McAfee says she does not accept claims that her late husband died by suicide. She's criticizing the media for spreading that story and says they can't be trusted. Here are the details.
Janice McAfee, the widow of tech mogul John McAfee, is criticizing media reports claiming her late husband died by suicide. In a statement posted on Twitter Tuesday, Janice said she needs answers surrounding her husband's death and noted the investigation is still ongoing. She wrote, "Until then, I do not accept the suicide story that has been spread by the malignant cancer that is the mainstream media. They and their unnamed sources are not to be trusted." John was found dead in a Barcelona jail cell on June 23rd. He was awaiting extradition to the U.S. on tax-related charges. Before his death, John had argued in a hearing that the charges against him were politically motivated. Spanish newspaper El País reported that according to unnamed sources close to the case, a preliminary autopsy concluded that John died by suicide. But in her Tuesday statement, Janice charged that, quote, "The story of John's suicide was already prepared and presented to the public before I or his attorneys were even notified of his death," adding she heard the news of John's death via Twitter. Both El País and the Associated Press reported that a suicide note had been found in John's pocket, citing unnamed sources familiar with the investigation. But Janice is calling this detail into question. She wrote, "It's conveniently reported that there was a suicide note found in his pocket, something that was not mentioned when I collected John's belongings from the prison, and another piece of information the media somehow got a hold of before myself and John's attorneys." The widow explained she spoke with John twice on the day he died. She says he told her they would continue to fight all the necessary appeals and said he would call her in the evening. But, she wrote, sadly, that call never happened. Janice says she plans to share information about the investigation into John's death when she can.
A prenatal test used worldwide is sending gene data of pregnant women to a Chinese company. The company developed the test together with the Chinese military. The U.S. sees a security risk. Rosanna Philpott reports.
A Chinese gene company that sells prenatal tests around the world has been harvesting genetic data from millions of women. The company, BGI Group, worked with the Chinese military to develop the tests. BGI is using the genetic data for sweeping research on population traits. The US sees it as a security risk. Government advisors warn that BGI's vast bank of genomic data could give China a path to economic and military advantage, and potentially lead to engineered pathogens or genetically enhanced soldiers.
I want to know what is happening with such sensitive data about me, such as my genome and that of my child.
This is Amelia. She's one of the more than 8 million women who have taken the BGI prenatal test. The 32-year-old office administrator spoke to Reuters on the condition that only her first name be used. She says she did sign consent, saying that her genetic data would be stored and used for research. What she did not realize, however, was that her information could end up in mainland China. BGI's headquarters and research are based in Shenzhen, but the form she signed did not make this clear. It said only that her sample would be sent for analysis to Hong Kong.
I have to admit that the news that my data could have been taken over by the Chinese government is shocking for me. After reading the form, I had the impression that I was well informed about the test and how the data would be used. There was information that, if I agree to it, it can be used for further studies to improve the method, but no, there wasn't much else.
BGI said it had never been asked by the Chinese government to provide the genetic testing data for research. The company's prenatal test, branded Nifty, is one of the most popular in the world. It's sold in at least 52 countries, though not in the United States. Tests like this, taken about 10 weeks into a pregnancy, capture DNA from the placenta in the woman's bloodstream to detect fetal abnormalities like Down syndrome. The tests don't carry names, but they do capture genetic information about the mother, which the test's privacy policy says may be shared for national security reasons. BGI said it hasn't been asked to do that. Online records reviewed by Reuters show that the genetic information of at least 500 women, including some outside of China, are also stored in China's National Gene Bank. Each row seen here is a different woman. Reuters could not determine if Amelia's data is in the gene bank. BGI records personal details such as women's country, height and weight. Researchers say this genetic big data can give clues to genes associated with, for example, bipolar disease or schizophrenia, link genes to height and body fat, and track viruses. While the procedure is private, the data is stored. Reuters found no evidence that BGI violated patient privacy agreements or regulations. BGI says it never has access to any identifiable personal data. The company says it only stores location data on women in mainland China and destroys foreign samples after 5 years. BGI's collaboration with the military on prenatal research has not been previously reported. The gene giant is a pivotal player in a genomics race between China and the US. An expert panel led by former Google chief executive Eric Schmidt said in March that the United States should recognize China's strides in biotechnology and AI as a new kind of national security threat. BGI did not respond to questions on its military collaboration or the national security threats that the US says its research poses. China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs said the report reflected, quote, groundless accusations and smears of US agencies. Over in Poland, Amelia says that if she had understood the extent of BGI's secondary research, she would have chosen a different test.
This could be a very important matter when choosing a test. For me, it would be.
A longtime scholar at a German think tank has successfully hidden his ties to Beijing since 2010, but not anymore. German prosecutors are now indicting him and detaining him for spying. NTD's Tiffany Meyer brings us more.
Germany arrested a scholar on Monday, accusing him of spying for China's Secret Service. That's the same day the CCP leader Xi Jinping held an online summit with German Chancellor Angela Merkel and French President Macron. The arrested scholar is identified as Klaus L., a political scientist. He has worked at a German think tank for over 2 decades and served the Chinese regime for money. That's according to the German prosecutor's announcement. The Chinese intelligence service recruited him during his lecture trip to Shanghai in 2010. The prosecutor's office says the man provided information to Beijing regularly since then and made trips to China until late 2019. The man collected information from various high-ranking political contacts. That's thanks to resources he developed over the years working for the think tank. German broadcaster ARD said the man worked for the Hans Seidel Foundation based in Munich. The foundation didn't make any immediate comment. Beijing-based app developer ByteDance has reportedly abandoned its plans to list in the New York market. The company owns widely popular video sharing platform TikTok. According to financial blog Zero Hedge, that decision follows uproar with Chinese ride-hailing service Didi. The company saw a staggering sell-off and a plunge in share price just days after its U.S. listing. It's billions of dollars in stock losses triggered by an order from Beijing, mandating its removal from all Chinese app stores. In recent months, Beijing has been expanding its antitrust crackdown on many of China's technology giants. It's wiped a combined $823 billion from their market value altogether. The corporations affected include Tencent, owner of popular messaging platform WeChat, tycoon Jack Ma's online retail giant Alibaba Group, and Didi. ByteDance is now considering plans to list in Hong Kong instead. Beijing's crackdown has seemingly made one message clear. Chinese firms should stay away from listing in the U.S. market. Instead, they can list domestically or in Hong Kong.
On Tuesday, visitors at Times Square saw an unusual sight: tens of thousands of bees. According to witnesses, the bees swarmed down 7th Avenue before being safely transported away by the NYPD.
New York City's Times Square welcomes hundreds of thousands of pedestrians each day. On Tuesday, it saw some rather special visitors, a swarm of 25,000 bees. The New York City Police Department posted on Twitter that the bees swarmed right across the street from a hot dog stand.
I see the bee by 44 street right there, and then all the way down to 43rd Street, is flying by the police station. And this is not the first time.
El Faramawi says another swarm of bees came to the exact same spot 2 years ago as well.
It was a lot.
The owner of the hot dog stand was not perturbed by the bees.
I make my smoke so the bees don't come nearby me.
He said other people witnessing the event also seemed more amused than scared.
Everybody have his phone record.
The New York City police responded quickly to remove the bees. These little visitors got to sit shotgun in a police vehicle before being transported to a safe place in the Hudson Valley.
Navigating a world of economic madness, you need to have the right guide. What do today's decisions mean for your tomorrow? We ask why. What's the alternative? Uncover the deeper reasons and the hidden influences, and highlight the real opportunities for profit. At NTD Business, we connect the dots for you. Good evening. Thanks for joining us.